Late at night, when everyone else had gone home, Ethan stayed behind in the tall glass building, mopping the marble floors and wiping fingerprints from the doors. He was the janitor, the man nobody noticed. People walked past him every day without looking twice. They only saw his faded uniform, his old shoes, and the mop in his hand. But no one saw the tired man behind the uniform. The man who once had a dream. Ethan used to be a musician. Years ago, before life turned hard, he played piano in little cafes and schools. He loved it not for fame or money, but for the way music could make people feel. Then his wife got sick, and the hospital bills kept coming. He sold his piano to pay for her treatment, and when she passed away, he was left with nothing but his son Liam. Since then, his only goal was to give that boy a good life. He worked nights so he could be there when Liam woke up for school. He packed lunches, walked him to the bus stop, and promised that one day things would be better. Liam was proud of his dad, even if other kids laughed, because his dad was just a janitor. Ethan never let it bother him. He smiled, told his son that no job was small if done with honesty. But sometimes, when the building grew quiet, and the echo of his mop filled the empty lobby, he missed the sound of piano keys beneath his fingers. In one corner of the storage room sat an old dust-covered piano. The company used it once for a Christmas party years ago, and since then it had been forgotten. Sometimes, when no one was around, Ethan would take off his gloves, sit on the cracked bench, and gently press a few keys. The sound was out of tune, but the feeling was the same. His fingers remembered. Even if his heart ached, it was his secret. His small escape from the world that had turned gray. Every night, he looked out at the city lights from the lobby window. He imagined himself on a stage again, his son sitting in the front row, clapping proudly. But those were just dreams. The real world didn't care about a janitor's talent. Still, that dream was enough to keep him going. It gave meaning to every long shift, every sore muscle, every lonely night. The people who worked in the building never noticed him. They were busy with meetings, reports, and phone calls. Sometimes they'd walk past him, talking about weekend plans or complaining about small problems. Ethan would smile and wish them good evening. But most of them barely replied. He didn't mind. He'd learned that kindness wasn't something you gave for attention. It was something you gave because it was right. One evening, as he finished polishing the marble floor, he heard laughter echoing from the upper hallway. A few young interns were talking loudly, joking about how boring their jobs were. One of them said something that caught his ear. "Hey, did you know there's an old piano in storage? We should ask the janitor to play it someday." They laughed, saying it would be funny to see him try. Ethan smiled faintly, shaking his head. He'd heard worse, and he didn't let it hurt him. Still, a small voice inside him whispered, "Maybe one day I will." That night, when the building finally emptied, Ethan went to the piano again. He brushed the dust off the keys and began to play softly. The melody was slow, tender, and full of memories. It filled the empty halls, wrapping the cold air in warmth. He closed his eyes, and for a few moments, he wasn't a janitor anymore. He was just a man playing his heart out to the night. What Ethan didn't know was that soon, fate would bring his music out of the shadows. The same people who laughed at him would stand silent, listening. And one man, the CEO of the company, would feel his heart break open at the sound of that forgotten tune. But for now, Ethan just played alone, lost in the music that still lived inside him, unaware that his life was about to change forever. The next morning, Ethan arrived early. Long before the office lights flickered on, he liked the silence before the storm, the calm before people filled the hallways with noise and orders. The smell of polish and coffee mixed in the air as he pushed his cleaning cart down the marble corridor. The piano in the lobby still stood there, uncovered from the night before, a quiet reminder of his secret. When the first group of interns walked in, laughter echoed through the lobby. They were young, energetic, full of dreams, and sometimes full of arrogance. One of them, a tall boy named Marcus, spotted Ethan near the piano and grinned. "Hey, old man, play us something," he said. His voice light but mocking. The others chuckled, pulling out their phones as if expecting a funny video. Ethan looked up, surprised, then gave a small, polite smile. "Maybe some other time," he replied gently. His calm tone only made them more curious. They didn't know that this quiet janitor once played grand pianos under bright lights. To them, he was just a man who cleaned floors, someone invisible, a young woman among them. Lily didn't laugh. She had noticed the way Ethan sometimes looked at the piano, like it meant something. There was something in his eyes, a kind of longing she couldn't name. "Leave him alone," she told Marcus softly. But he only shrugged. "Come on, it's a joke," he said. "It's not like he can actually play." Ethan didn't say anything. He simply continued dusting the edge of the piano. His fingers brushed the keys by accident, and one soft note echoed through the lobby. It was just a single sound, but it made everyone pause for a second. Even Lily felt a strange chill, like that note had emotion in it. Later that day, word spread quickly. "The janitor can play piano," someone said at the coffee machine. Another replied, "Really?" He didn't look like the type. Soon the rumor became a running joke around the office. Some people wanted to see if it was true. Others just wanted a break from work. At the same time, the company was preparing for a special day. The CEO, Mr. Harris, was coming in for an unannounced visit. He was a powerful man, cold and respected, known for his serious face and sharp words. It had been years since anyone had seen him smile. Many whispered that he hadn't been the same since losing his daughter in an accident. That afternoon, as the staff buzzed with nervous energy, Ethan kept cleaning quietly. He noticed the extra flowers, the food trays, and the fresh polish on every desk. Everyone was trying to make things perfect for the CEO. But while others focused on appearances, Ethan's thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't stop hearing that one note he'd accidentally played earlier. When evening came, the lobby lights dimmed to a golden glow, and most people left, but the interns stayed behind. Cleaning up after a long meeting, Marcus noticed the piano again and whispered to his friends. "Now's our chance," they called out to Ethan, who was sweeping near the door. "Come on, play something. Just one song." Ethan looked at them, tired but kind. "Why?" he asked softly. "Because we want to see if you're as good as they say." Marcus smirked. The others giggled quietly. Lily frowned and whispered, "This isn't right." But curiosity had already filled the room. Ethan hesitated, staring at the piano. His heart pounded, not because he feared them, but because he feared himself. He hadn't played in years. What if he had forgotten? What if the music that once lived inside him was gone? But deep down, another voice whispered, "It's still there." Slowly, he walked toward the piano. The interns went silent, phones in hand, ready to laugh if he made a mistake. Ethan sat down, his hands trembling slightly. He took a slow breath, the kind he used to take before every concert long ago. Then he pressed one key, then another. The sound that came out was soft, uncertain, but alive. It spread through the air like a breeze, something fragile yet powerful. The laughter stopped, the giggles faded. Even Marcus lowered his phone without realizing it. Ethan's hands began to move faster, remembering paths they hadn't taken in years, unseen by anyone. A tall figure had stepped into the lobby, Mr. Harris himself. He stopped in his tracks, the sound of the piano freezing him mid-step. Something about the melody caught his heart. It was not perfect, not polished, but full of pain, full of truth. As the last note lingered, the silence that followed was heavy. Ethan stood up quietly, gave a small nod, and said, "There you go, just a small tune." Then he picked up his mop and returned to work. No one spoke for a while. They just stood there, phones forgotten. Hearts strangely stirred, and in the shadows near the elevator, the CEO wiped a tear from his eye before quietly walking away, thinking about a melody his daughter once played, and a janitor who reminded him what music truly meant. The next morning, the entire building buzzed with whispers about what had happened the night before. The story spread faster than any office memo. The janitor played the piano, and it was beautiful, one person said at the coffee machine. Another replied, "The CEO was there, you know. He actually stopped to listen." People weren't sure if it was true, but it didn't matter suddenly. The quiet janitor had become the most talked about person in the company. Ethan didn't notice the attention. He came in as always, pushing his cleaning cart, greeting the security guard and starting his shift. His mind was still on the piano, on that brief moment when he felt alive again. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him had woken up, something he thought he'd buried long ago. Meanwhile, in the top floor office, CEO Mr. Harris sat behind his massive desk, staring out the window at the city skyline. His assistant Daniel entered quietly, holding a file. "Sir, there's been a lot of talk about one of our janitors," he said. "Apparently he played piano last night in the lobby. People are saying it was incredible." Mr. Harris didn't look up, but his hand froze on his pen. After a long pause, he simply said, "Schedule a staff gathering tomorrow evening." I want to see it for myself, Daniel nodded, slightly confused. It wasn't like the CEO to care about gossip, but something in his tone suggested this was personal. Downstairs, Ethan continued his work, wiping windows and collecting trash bins. A few employees smiled at him for the first time. One even said, "You've got some talent, man." He smiled politely, though inside he felt a mix of pride and worry. He never liked attention and he didn't want trouble. All he wanted was to do his job and go home to his son. That evening, Lily caught up with him as he was about to leave. "Hey," she said softly. "You really surprised everyone last night." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "I didn't mean to, it was just a little song." Lily looked at him curiously. "You're better than a little song, Mr. Ethan. Where did you learn to play like that?" He hesitated, looking at the empty lobby. "A long time ago," he said finally. "My wife used to sing while I played. We dreamed of opening a small music school, but life had other plans." His voice broke a little, and Lily didn't ask more. She could feel that behind his calm face lived 1,000 stories of struggle. The next day, the company buzzed with preparations. The CEO had ordered a short employee appreciation gathering in the lobby. Everyone knew it was unusual. The rumors spread quickly. The piano would be played again. And this time, in front of everyone. Ethan didn't know. No one had told him when he arrived that evening. He was surprised to see lights being arranged and chairs lined up in rows. "What's going on?" he asked one of the workers. "Big guy's orders," the man replied. "Some kind of staff event." Ethan shrugged and went back to cleaning. Trying not to get in the way, by 7 o'clock, the employees gathered in the lobby, laughter and chatter filling the air. The piano stood in the center. Shining under a spotlight, Ethan stood in the back, holding his mop, watching quietly. Then the CEO entered, and everyone fell silent. Mr. Harris looked calm, but his eyes scanned the crowd until they found Ethan. "There he is," he said, his deep voice echoing. "Mr. Ethan, would you join us for a moment?" The crowd turned, whispers rippling like waves. Ethan froze, confused. "Me, sir?" he asked. "Yes, you," the CEO replied, walking closer. "I heard you have a gift." The air grew thick. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to refuse, but something in Mr. Harris's expression stopped him. It wasn't an order. It was almost a plea. "Please," the CEO said quietly. "Play for us." Ethan nodded slowly and walked toward the piano. The crowd went silent, phones ready to record. But even their excitement couldn't break the heavy emotion hanging in the room. He sat down, took a deep breath, and let his fingers find the keys. The first notes were soft, trembling like the beginning of a confession. Then the melody grew stronger, warmer. It told the story of loss, of a man who once had everything and then lost it all but kept going. The music filled the hall, climbing up the marble walls, echoing in every heart that listened. Mr. Harris stood still, his eyes fixed on the pianist, each note cut deeper, stirring memories he'd locked away for years. When the song changed, he recognized it, his daughter's favorite tune, the one she used to play before she passed. His breath caught, and he felt a tear fall before he could stop it. By the time Ethan finished, no one clapped at first. They were too moved to speak. Then one by one, people began to applaud, softly at first, then louder. Some had tears in their eyes. Even the interns who once laughed now stood silent. Ashamed but in awe, Ethan stood, unsure what to do. The CEO stepped forward, shaking his hand. "Thank you," he said in a broken voice. "You reminded me what real music feels like." Ethan smiled gently. "It's not about perfect notes, sir," he said. "It's about the heart behind them." That night, as Ethan walked home under the city lights, his hand still trembling, he realized something had changed. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years he felt seen, not as a janitor, but as a man whose music still mattered. The morning after the performance, the entire building felt different. The same hallways that once buzzed with cold professionalism now carried a strange warmth. People greeted Ethan when he passed, not out of pity but with genuine respect. A few even asked him if he'd ever played professionally. He only smiled and said, "A long time ago," then went back to polishing the floors, but inside, something in him was still trembling. The echoes of that night's applause refused to fade. Meanwhile, up in his office, CEO Mr. Harris couldn't focus on his work. The haunting melody Ethan played replayed in his mind again and again. It wasn't just music, it was a message, a memory brought back to life. He could still see his daughter, little Emily, sitting at their old piano, her small fingers struggling to reach the keys. "Listen, Daddy," she used to say. "I'm getting better," and he would smile, pretending not to tear up now. That same melody had come from a janitor's hands. By noon he made a decision. He called his assistant Daniel. "Find out everything you can about Ethan, the janitor from last night." Daniel blinked in surprise. "Everything, sir?" Mr. Harris nodded. "Yes, everything, and bring him to my office when his shift ends." Downstairs, Ethan was unaware of the quiet storm his performance had caused. During his lunch break, he sat outside on a bench, eating a simple sandwich while talking to his son on the phone. "Hey, Dad." Liam's voice chirped, "I saw your video. Everyone at school's talking about it." Ethan froze. "What video?" he asked. "The one from last night. Someone posted it online. Janitor plays piano, makes CEO cry. It already has thousands of views." Ethan nearly dropped his sandwich. His heart raced. He hadn't realized anyone was recording. "Liam, he started, but his son interrupted. "Dad, you were amazing. I told everyone my dad's the best pianist ever." Ethan chuckled softly, trying not to cry. "Thanks, kiddo," he whispered. "I'm just glad you're proud." When his shift ended, Ethan was surprised to find Daniel waiting for him in the lobby. "Mr. Harris would like to see you," Daniel said politely. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. Daniel smiled. "Not at all, sir. I think it's the opposite." The elevator ride felt endless. Ethan stared at his reflection in the mirrored walls, trying to smooth his old uniform. His heart pounded harder with every floor they passed. When the doors opened to the CEO's office, the view of the skyline took his breath away. Mr. Harris stood by the window, hands behind his back, looking out at the city. "Ethan," he said without turning around, "please, come in." Ethan stepped forward quietly. "Sir, if this is about the piano, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause any distraction." Mr. Harris turned, his expression soft. "No, you didn't cause a distraction. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten." He motioned to the chair. "Sit." Ethan sat carefully, unsure what to say. The CEO studied him for a moment, then asked, "Do you know the song you played?" "The second one?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir, it was something I used to play for my daughter. When she was sick." Mr. Harris's eyes darkened. "My daughter used to play it too," he said quietly. It was her favorite. For a few moments, neither man spoke. The air in the room felt heavy, filled with the weight of two fathers who had both lost the light of their lives. Finally, Mr. Harris sighed. "You know, I haven't felt anything from music in years, not until last night." "You brought that back?" Ethan lowered his eyes, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean to make you sad." The CEO shook his head. "You didn't make me sad, Ethan. You made me remember." He walked to his desk and picked up a folder. "Tell me, why are you working as a janitor?" "You could be teaching, performing," Ethan smiled faintly. "Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sir, after my wife passed, I needed something stable for my boy. Music doesn't pay bills, cleaning does." He said it without bitterness, just truth. Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "You're a good man, Ethan, and a great father." He opened the folder and slid it across the desk. "I want you to take this." Inside was a letter of transfer, a promotion to facilities supervisor, higher pay, better hours. "You've earned more than a mop and bucket," the CEO said softly, "and I'd also like you to perform again. At our upcoming charity gala, would you do that?" Ethan stared at the papers, unable to speak. His throat tightened. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Mr. Harris smiled. "Do it for your son and maybe for my daughter too." Ethan stood, shaking his hand firmly. "Then yes, sir, I'll do it." As he left the office, Daniel congratulated him with a grin. "Looks like you're moving up." Ethan laughed softly. "Feels strange," he said. "Like life's playing a new song for me." That night, as he walked home through the cool city air, his phone buzzed again. Liam had sent a message. It was a link to the viral video. The caption read, "When talent meets heart, miracles happen." Ethan smiled, tears filling his eyes. The world might have just discovered him. But his son always believed first, and for Ethan, that was the only applause that truly mattered. The night of the charity gala arrived like a dream Ethan still couldn't believe was real. He stood backstage in a crisp black suit the company had bought him, hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. For years, his reflection had been of a tired janitor with weary eyes, but tonight he looked almost like the man he used to be, the man who once played under warm lights before life took everything away. The ballroom glowed with golden chandeliers and laughter. Tables were filled with investors, executives, and guests dressed in elegant suits and glittering dresses. Cameras flashed, waiters moved like clockwork, and in the center of it all stood a glossy black grand piano. Ethan stared at it from behind the curtain, his heart pounding. "Are you ready, Mr. Ethan?" asked Lily, who had volunteered to help with the event. She gave him an encouraging smile. "You've got this," Ethan smiled nervously. "I hope so," he whispered. "It's been a long time since I played in front of this many people." Out in the audience, Mr. Harris sat at the main table, looking proud but calm since that day in his office. He had treated Ethan not like an employee, but like an equal. He had even invited Liam to attend the gala. The young boy sat in the front row, legs swinging, eyes bright with excitement. As the lights dimmed, the host announced, "Tonight, we have a very special performance from someone whose story reminds us that true talent never fades. No matter where life takes us, please welcome Mr. Ethan Cole." The crowd applauded politely. Unaware of what they were about to witness, Ethan walked out slowly, the sound of his shoes echoing in the hushed room. He sat down at the piano, fingers hovering above the keys. The lights cast a soft glow over him, and for a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then he began to play. The first notes were gentle, uncertain at first, like a whisper testing its strength. Then the melody grew, weaving through the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Each chord carried emotion, loss, hope, love, and survival. It wasn't a practiced showpiece or a technical display. It was raw, honest, and human as he played, his mind filled with images, his wife's smile, his son's laughter, the quiet nights of mopping floors, the dusty piano in the storage room. Every struggle became sound, every tear turned into melody. The audience leaned forward, drawn into the story his music told without a single word. Lily stood by the curtain, her hands clasped to her chest. Unable to look away, around her, waiters froze in place. Even the chatter of glasses stopped. The song wrapped around the entire room like a spell. When the music reached its peak, Ethan closed his eyes, letting his soul take over. The final part of the song wasn't written, it was felt. He improvised from the heart, blending his pain with joy, letting every note heal what life had broken. And as he played the last few chords, he looked up and saw his son's small face glowing with pride. The last note lingered, hanging in the air before fading into silence. For a moment no one moved, then like a wave, the entire ballroom stood and applauded. Some clapped with tears in their eyes. Others simply stood in stunned admiration. It wasn't just a performance, it was a confession of the human soul. Ethan stood, bowed his head slightly, and smiled. His eyes searched for Mr. Harris, who was already on his feet, applauding with a hand over his heart. The CEO's eyes were moist, but his smile was genuine and full of warmth. He walked up to the stage, took the microphone, and said, "Tonight, we were reminded that greatness doesn't come from titles. It comes from heart, from the courage to keep shining even in the dark." He looked at Ethan. "Thank you for reminding us what real music sounds like." The applause grew louder, echoing through the hall until it felt like thunder. Liam ran up to the stage and hugged his father tightly. Ethan knelt down, whispering, "We did it." "Kiddo," Liam grinned. "You were amazing." "Dad." After the event, people lined up to meet him, shake his hand and take pictures. Reporters asked for interviews. Music schools offered to collaborate. But through all the attention, Ethan stayed humble, smiling quietly, knowing that none of this was about fame. It was about finding himself again. Later that night, as the hall emptied and the lights dimmed, Mr. Harris approached him privately. "Ethan, that was beyond music," he said. "That was a gift," Ethan smiled. "Thank you, sir. But the real gift was getting the chance to play again." The CEO nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than play. You made me feel my daughter's presence again. For that, I'll always be grateful." Outside, the night was cool and quiet. The stars above shimmered like scattered piano keys. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling peace for the first time in years. Beside him, Liam walked proudly, holding his father's hand. "So, Dad," the boy said with a grin, "does this mean you're famous now?" Ethan laughed softly. No, son, it just means people finally listened. And as they walked home through the glowing city streets, the sound of distant music followed them, gentle and timeless, just like the man who played it. The week after the gala felt like a blur. Ethan's name was suddenly everywhere. Local news stations ran stories titled, "From Mop to Maestro," and "Janitor's Music Brings CEO to Tears." His video had gone viral across social media. Reaching millions within days, people from around the world commented. Musicians, workers, even strangers, saying his story gave them hope. But Ethan still showed up every morning with his mop and cleaning cart, still greeted the security guard with a smile. He didn't want fame to change who he was. The company building, though, wasn't the same anymore wherever he went. People stopped to thank him. Some even asked for piano lessons during lunch breaks. The same interns who once mocked him now rushed to carry his supplies or bring him coffee. Marcus, the loudest of them, even apologized one morning. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ethan," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "We didn't know who you were, what you'd been through." Ethan smiled gently. "It's okay, son. You don't need to know someone's story to treat them kindly." Meanwhile, in the top office, Mr. Harris was making quiet plans of his own. The performance had done more than move him, it had changed him. For years he'd been buried in numbers, deadlines, and board meetings, forgetting the things that once gave him peace. But after that night, he started visiting his old piano again at home, dusting off the keys his daughter used to play. The melody Ethan performed had reawakened something that grief had silenced. One afternoon, Mr. Harris called Ethan to his office again. This time, he looked less like a CEO and more like a man with purpose. "Ethan," he began, "I've been thinking about what you said, that music should be shared, not hidden. So I'd like to sponsor something in your name, a community music program, free for children who can't afford lessons." Ethan's eyes widened. "Sir, that's incredible," he said. "But you don't need to do that for me." Mr. Harris smiled. "I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it because of you. You reminded me that the world needs beauty, especially where people least expect it." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he nodded. "Then let's do it, sir. For the kids, for the ones who just need someone to believe in them." Within weeks, the plan was set in motion. They transformed one of the company's unused warehouses into a music center, bright and welcoming, with donated instruments and colorful murals. Ethan helped paint the walls himself, often bringing Liam along after school. The boy loved the idea that his dad would be teaching music again. "Does this mean you're a teacher now?" Liam asked one evening as they arranged the chairs. "Maybe," Ethan chuckled. "But I think I'm still learning too." When the first batch of children arrived, shy and wide-eyed, Ethan sat at the piano and played a soft tune to welcome them. The sound filled the room with warmth. The children gathered around, fascinated. Some of them had never seen a piano before. He looked at them and said softly, "Music doesn't care where you come from. It only cares about what you feel." Word spread quickly about the program. Families came from different neighborhoods hoping their children could learn. Even the staff from the company volunteered to help. Lily started organizing weekend recitals. Marcus handled social media, and Mr. Harris often attended the sessions quietly, watching from the back one evening as the sun dipped low through the windows. Ethan noticed the CEO standing near the door listening. He walked over and asked, "Would you like to play something, sir?" Mr. Harris hesitated, then smiled sadly. "It's been too long." Ethan nodded toward the piano. "It's never too late." The CEO sat down slowly, touching the keys as if greeting an old friend. His fingers trembled, but when he began to play, the sound was pure and soft. The children listened in awe. Ethan joined in, adding gentle harmonies. Together, the two men, one who had lost a daughter and one who had lost a wife, played a duet that blended grief with grace. When they finished, the children clapped, and Mr. Harris laughed quietly for the first time in years. "I forgot how this feels," he said. Ethan smiled. "That's the magic of music. It never leaves. It just waits for us to remember." Later that night, as Ethan locked up the center, he looked at the piano sitting under the soft light. It wasn't just an instrument anymore, it was a bridge, connecting hearts, healing wounds, and turning pain into something beautiful. He turned off the lights, feeling peace settle deep in his chest. Outside, Liam was waiting with a proud smile. "Dad, can I learn to play too?" Ethan grinned, wrapping an arm around his son's shoulder. "Of course, kiddo, but remember, playing is easy, feeling it, That's where the real magic begins. And as they walked home beneath the city's fading lights, Ethan realized he wasn't just a janitor or even a musician anymore. He was a storyteller, and every note he played was another chapter in a life that had found its song again. Months passed, and the little music center became the heart of the neighborhood. The sign outside read, "The Harmony Project," founded by Ethan and sponsored by Harris Industries. Children's laughter echoed through the halls each afternoon, and the once empty warehouse now pulsed with life. Ethan no longer wore a janitor's uniform. Instead, he wore rolled-up sleeves, chalk dust on his hands, and the warm smile of a man finally living his purpose. Every evening, he sat with the kids at the piano, teaching them not only how to play but how to feel the music. "Don't just press keys," he'd say gently. "Tell a story." Some of the children came from broken homes, some struggled in school, but in this place, none of that mattered. Music made them equal, and Ethan treated every student like they were his own child. Liam, now 10, had become his best helper. He ran around handing out sheet music, tuning guitars and cheering on the shy ones. "Come on, you can do it," he'd say, clapping his hands with the same enthusiasm his father once lacked for himself. Ethan often looked at him and thought how much his wife would have loved to see this, to see how far they'd both come from those dark, hopeless years. One rainy afternoon, as the children practiced a group piece for an upcoming concert, the door opened quietly. Mr. Harris stepped inside with an umbrella in hand and a proud smile on his face. "You've turned this place into something special," he said, watching a little girl carefully pluck a tune on a borrowed violin. Ethan smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "They did it themselves, sir. I just gave them a reason to believe," the CEO nodded. "You gave them more than that, Ethan. You gave them a voice," and he handed over a sealed envelope. "The city council approved our grant proposal. You'll have funding for 2 more years, plus additional instruments." Ethan blinked, taken aback. "Sir, it's what you deserve," Mr. Harris interrupted kindly. "And what these kids deserve." That evening, Ethan stayed late, sitting alone at the piano after everyone had gone. The rain pattered softly on the roof, and the room felt alive with echoes of laughter and melodies. He began to play a tune, slow, tender, full of quiet gratitude. It was the same melody he had played the night of the gala, but gentler now, like a story reaching its peaceful ending. He didn't realize someone had entered the room until he heard a familiar voice. "You still sound like a dream, Dad," Liam said, smiling sleepily from the doorway. Ethan laughed softly. "You should be in bed." "Can't sleep," Liam shrugged. "Can you play Mom's song?" Ethan's heart tightened. It had been years since he played that melody, the one his wife used to hum while cooking, the one they danced to in their tiny living room when life was still good. Slowly he began to play. The notes floated softly. Carrying warmth and memory, Liam came closer, resting his head against his father's shoulder. Together they sat in silence as the song filled the room, wrapping them in the comfort of love that never truly fades. When the last note faded, Ethan looked at his son and whispered, "She'd be proud of you, you know." Liam looked up, eyes glistening. "And you, Dad, she'd be proud of you too." The next day, the center buzzed with excitement. Their first public concert was just hours away. Parents, neighbors, and company staff filled the small auditorium they'd built. The children wore simple uniforms and wide smiles, and in the front row sat Mr. Harris and his wife holding hands. It was the first time anyone had seen the CEO so relaxed. When Ethan walked to the piano, applause erupted. He raised a hand modestly. "This concert isn't about me," he said into the microphone. "It's about them, the next generation of dreamers, who just needed someone to open the door." The crowd cheered, and the concert began. Each child played with confidence and heart, their small fingers dancing across keys and strings. Some stumbled, some laughed nervously, but none gave up. And when the final performance came, Ethan joined them for one last song, a piece he wrote called "Hands That Still Remember." It began with a gentle piano line. Then the children's instruments joined in one by one. Violins, flutes, and soft drums blending like a single heartbeat. The music swelled with emotion, hope, love, and second chances. The audience rose to their feet, tears glimmering in their eyes. In the back row, an elderly janitor from another branch of the company stood watching, wiping his eyes quietly. He whispered, "That's for all of us who were never seen." As the last chord rang out, the crowd erupted in applause. Ethan stood, bowing slightly. his eyes meeting Mr. Harris's across the room. The CEO placed a hand over his heart and mouthed, "Thank you." That night, as Ethan locked up the center, he looked around at the rows of chairs, the shining instruments, the posters of smiling children, and whispered to himself, This is what music was always meant for." He turned off the lights and stepped outside into the cool night. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. Liam walked beside him, holding his father's hand tightly. "So, Dad," he said with a grin, "what's next?" Ethan smiled softly. "Next?" he said, looking up at the stars. "We keep playing." And somewhere in the quiet distance, the faint sound of a piano echoed again, soft, eternal, and full of life. Just like the man who refused to stop believing. The following year, the music center had become more than just a building. It was a heartbeat that pulsed through the city. Families called it the miracle place, where broken spirits found healing through song, and forgotten dreams found new life. Ethan often stood by the window in the evenings, watching the golden light fall across the instruments, and thought how strange it was that everything he'd lost had led him here. To something so beautiful, Liam had grown taller, more confident, and was now one of the best pianists in the center. He didn't just play like his father, he felt the music, closing his eyes the same way Ethan once did. It made Ethan proud and emotional all at once. He saw his wife's smile and their son every time Liam played, and it reminded him that some love never fades. It just changes form. Mr. Harris visited often, not as a CEO, but as a friend. Sometimes he brought old photos of his daughter Emily and sat quietly while Ethan played her favorite tune. "She'd be your biggest fan," he'd say with a bittersweet smile. Over time, the two men had built something deeper than gratitude, a bond of shared loss and healing. One afternoon, the mayor's office reached out, asking if Ethan and his students would perform at the city's annual festival. It was the biggest event of the year. Broadcast live across the state, Ethan hesitated at first. "That's a big stage," he told Lily, now the center's coordinator. "These kids are brave." "But that's a lot of pressure," Lily smiled. "They're ready, Ethan. You taught them that music isn't about fear, it's about truth." The day of the festival arrived with bright skies and nervous excitement. Hundreds of people filled the park, colorful lights strung across the trees. The city stage gleamed under the sun, and in the front row sat families, journalists, and children clutching handmade signs that said things like, "Play your heart out." Backstage, Ethan adjusted his tie while the students tuned their instruments. "Remember," he said softly, "you're not performing to impress anyone. You're performing to share something, your story, your heart." The children nodded, and Liam squeezed his father's hand. "We've got this, Dad," he whispered. When they walked out onto the stage, applause rippled through the crowd. The announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the children of the Harmony Project." The sound that followed wasn't perfect, it wasn't meant to be, it was real, raw, full of energy and love. They played the piece Ethan had composed just for this day, a song called "The Light We Carry." It began with a single piano note, gentle as a heartbeat. Then one by one the children joined in. Strings, flutes, guitars, all blending into a rising wave of sound. The melody spoke of loss, struggle, and hope reborn. People in the audience held hands, some wiping tears, others smiling through them. As the music swelled, Ethan glanced toward the front row and saw Mr. Harris standing there. Head bowed, his wife beside him, tears glistening on her cheeks. The old pain that once ruled their lives now melted into something peaceful. The melody carried them somewhere soft and forgiving. Then came Liam's solo. The crowd fell silent as he began to play, small fingers dancing across the piano keys. His touch was delicate yet confident, every note echoing his father's spirit. Ethan watched with pride as the boy finished the piece and looked up with shining eyes. The audience rose to their feet. The applause thundered through the park, and cameras flashed like stars. After the performance, reporters swarmed them, microphones flashing. "Ethan, how does it feel to see this transformation?" He smiled humbly. "It feels like coming home. I used to think music was about stages and crowds, but it's about people. It's about what you give from your heart." Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Ethan stood alone on the stage, looking up at the stars. He remembered every step of the journey, the years of cleaning floors, the laughter of the interns, the moment his hands touched the keys again. And the day the music returned to his life, Mr. Harris joined him quietly. "You've changed this city, Ethan," he said. "No, sir," Ethan replied softly. "We changed each other." The two men stood in silence for a moment, the night breeze carrying the faint sound of distant applause. When Ethan finally returned to the center that night, the piano was waiting for him in the empty hall. He sat down and played one last tune for the day, something gentle and slow. Each note felt like a thank you to the past, to the pain, to every person who had believed in him. Liam peeked in from the doorway smiling. "Still can't sleep without your piano, huh?" Ethan chuckled quietly. "Maybe not, kiddo. Some songs don't end, they just fade softly." He looked around the room, the instruments, the pictures of his students, the soft glow of the lights, and realized something he'd never fully understood before. His dream had come true, just not in the way he once imagined. It wasn't fame or wealth or applause, it was legacy, love, and a world made better by the sound of kindness. And as his fingers played the final notes, the building seemed to hum along, echoing a truth that would live long after him. That sometimes, the most beautiful music comes from those who were once unheard.